Back in the early 1960s, while campaigning to get into the White House, John F. Kennedy gave a speech right here in Pottsville, right behind me. Once elected, of course, one of his biggest goals was to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Kennedy's speech will forever be remembered here in Pottsville thanks to a local businessman who donated an actual meteorite from the moon. He made some artwork and they embedded it right in the sidewalk. I don't know if you can see that little square behind me. We'll get a better shot so you can check it out. So it's fitting that we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 and man's first step on the moon right here in Pottsville.
Some say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago? Why the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
July 20th, 1969. The space race between the United States and the Soviet Union ends with American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin standing on the finish line around 240,000 miles away from Earth. July 20th, 2019, 50 years after the first moon landing, the Pottsville Area School District celebrates that accomplishment with Apollo Day, a trip back to the 1960s. As NASA was shooting for the moon, some people in the Pottsville Area School District were looking to inspire another generation of explorers here on the Earth.
This facility, as well as the facility that you're going to see in a little bit up on the roof, this was installed back in 1966. There were a few other school districts, Tamaqua and I believe Pine Grove, that at one point in time had a planetarium. They no longer do. I don't know exactly when they put theirs in, but they were not as nice and majestic as the one we have here. So Dr. Alex Addy, who was the superintendent at the time, really kind of pushed for this. He wanted his students, the students of Pottsville Area High School, to be able to experience this, to get them interested in space because of all that was going on.
50 years after the end of the space race, NASA is trying to race humans back to the moon by 2024 with the Artemis program. They say this program will pave the way for humans to land on Mars. Pottsville Area High School has been turning out students who can help with this next giant leap and others in space.
We have a young lady that's standing behind us. She's going to Harvard for astrophysics. So, I mean, you know, when you see that's a pretty impressive thing. And there's a lot of kids who are excited about it. And, you know, especially with all of the STEM careers that are going to be opening up, and, you know, SpaceX and Boeing and all of these, you know, I believe now there's maybe a handful of companies that NASA is working with to supply themselves with stuff to get us to the moon and beyond. So there's just going to be so many opportunities out there. We have another former student who is going to be working with the James Webb Space Telescope. He's going to be one of the you know, handful of people that are collecting data once it comes back up, collecting the data and sorting it out.
That young lady who's going to Harvard science teacher Adrian Portland just mentioned is Victoria Oswald. We catch up with her on the football field as students in the engineering club are getting ready to launch a model rocket. We'll hear from Oswald, but first...
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
When I went to visit Harvard for their acceptance student day, one of the kids I sat next to at breakfast knew someone who worked on the first image of the black hole because Harvard College has a partnership with the Astrophysical Smithsonian Research Center. So going into things like that, I'll actually have direct access to those things as I get older in school.
It's called the Artemis program. It's named after Apollo's sister now. So they want to put the first woman on the moon. Would you go? Is that something you do? Or would you be doing the science on the ground?
Science on the ground, definitely. You have to have certain physical capabilities to go to the moon. I might have a heart attack on the way up.
Throughout Apollo Day, Portland gives talks in the school's planetarium. He starts by showing pictures of John F. Kennedy's campaign speech in Pottsville.
And I'll show you kind of the picture that maybe some of you have seen. But were you there?
I was in that crowd.
That was the voice of Edie McDonough, who remembers seeing Kennedy speak here in Pottsville.
I remember the big crowd, the big crowd, and hearing him speak. You probably couldn't see much. We were left out of school to go downtown and watch his speech. And then we had to walk back to school before we were dismissed.
McDonough also remembers where she was when Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon.
Well, I wasn't able to see it all back then because I was working.
Okay.
So you had to listen to it on the radio. You know, in the factory you could put headphones on and listen to the broadcast on the radio. It was kind of neat to be able to see it all and listen to it all. See it later on TV, on the news. Back then you didn't do much taping. It was just, you either saw it or you missed it.
Mixed with the excitement on Apollo Day is this question: why haven't humans been back to the moon since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972?
The hardest part about landing on the moon for me to understand is why we haven't been back. We have the math, we understand it, and as I got older and became an engineer, I finally learned that the reason we haven't been back is we haven't built any of the stuff anymore, and you build it one or two times, it's easy to do. But as soon as you stop building it, you lose all the know-how, all the little notes and everything.
Obviously it was a money thing, but I now looking back at it, as disappointing as it is that we didn't kind of continue, they were planning in the 80s to be at Mars. But then, you have the Vietnam War, and you have a lot of people protesting, and why are we spending all this money to send people to space when we have people that are struggling here in the United States, which, you can kind of understand that's a pretty powerful statement. So, the space shuttle just did incredible things, and to be able to get Hubble up and a bunch of other satellites, and put the International Space Station together, and just learn more about the effects of zero gravity, and the people staying in space for longer periods of time, which I think is just going to benefit us as we head to Mars. Hopefully, they're talking probably late 2030s.
50 years from now, will people be living on the moon or Mars? Will we keep exploring? This may give us some hope. Here's someone who seems to have the right stuff.
Annabelle, would you go to the moon one day?
Yes.
Here's to the next 50 years. In Pottsville on planet Earth for SSPTV News, I'm Ken Carroll.